Hello, and welcome to Holistic Emails, Email and More, a Q&A with. I'm your host, Skip Federa, and today we're talking about how a successful email marketing program starts with a solid strategy. As you know, this is your show. We bring the experts, but you bring the questions. Those questions are what drive this conversation. It's unscripted, it's unrehearsed, and today we are going to have a load of fun. But before we get too much further, get too deep into this, it's really important. It's really important that we say a big thank you to this season's sponsors. So our platinum sponsor, again, this year is RPE Origin. RPE Origin's team of email experts has been obsessed with email marketing for nearly 20 years. From strategy to creative to execution to data analysis, they help companies increase their email ROI through a cross-vertical data-centric approach. Our silver sponsor this year is Sino. And our friends at Sino have built an amazing email analytics platform that will enable you to explore and benchmark your email campaigns like never before. Their intuitive platform makes dealing with data feel like a friendly chat, not a complicated puzzle. And a big welcome to our latest sponsor, Bouncer. Bouncer is an email verification and deliverability platform with super powerful tech and caring people behind it. Use Bouncer to increase your email marketing ROI and land smoothly in your recipient's inbox. So this is season 5 of Email and More. I can't believe we're up to season 5 already. But what that means is there are a lot of great sessions in our back catalog. So if you're joining us for the first time or want to go back to one of your favorite episodes from the archive, check out our website at www.holisticemailmarketing.com and click on the events item in the menu, the events option in the menu. Obviously, don't do that now. Hang out here because we have put together a brilliant panel for you today. With me is Aubrey Miller-Schmidt, Senior Email Marketing and Website Programs Manager at Main Street America Insurance. Jennifer Hoth, who recently joined Dunnhumby as a Director of CRM and Loyalty. And Sarah Schofield, Director of Corporate Email Marketing at US Bank. And with me, as always, best-selling author and award-winning thought leader, Kath Pay of Holistic Email Marketing. Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Great.
Hello.
Hi.
Excellent. So our time always passes way too quickly, folks. So get your questions into the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of your browser there, window there. Now, one of the things I love about being a marketer and being a member of the wider marketing community is that marketers are very self-deprecating. We do not take ourselves too seriously. While that makes us quite fun to hang out with, it does bring with it some bigger challenges. One of those challenges is explaining not just what we do, but how we do it to non-marketers. Marketing is complicated. Come on, it's easy to say, hey, let's send some emails to our prospects and let them know about a new service. Senior management hears that and thinks, well, that sounds like a good idea. Should be able to implement that this week, right? I mean, how hard could it be? I write emails every day. Actually, I also send text messages and use WhatsApp. Let's do that too. We've all had those conversations, right? So first of all, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Secondly, is this the best way to communicate with this audience? Well, you know what? We don't know. The audience hasn't been clearly defined. It's not clear what our objectives are. Has anybody had a chance to look and see if we even have mobile numbers for these folks? And if we do, how do we have permission to use it? And even if we do have it, and we do have permission to use it, are they really expecting us to communicate with them directly to their phones? So we've all had these discussions with senior management, and sometimes very loudly. But just as often, we are our own worst enemy, right? Marketing, especially email marketing, can be a bit of a hamster wheel. We get so focused on getting the next campaign out the door that we do not make the time to stop and assess how the last one did, much less take a day out to think about the big picture. Take the time to answer those 3 really important questions. What are my company's objectives? What are my customers' goals? And how can I best meet both of these with my marketing programs? And with that, I want to turn this over to our panel. So I'm going to ask all of you this, but Kath, we'll start with you. Tell me about a moment when you realized the importance of a strategic approach over purely just getting the next campaign out the door.
Probably when I started my first business.
Hey, Kath, sorry to cut you off there. It looks like your camera's off.
Oh.
Or I'm not seeing your
okay.
camera.
I
can
Okay.
say too.
Crack on. That must just be me then.
Okay. Yeah, so probably when I first started my first business, and which was a web design agency, and I kind of, I was basically fumbling along and working out a whole bunch of tactics that I should be using. Of course, back then, email marketing didn't even exist. But I still had to come up with a strategy as such in order to be able to, promote my business. And that's when I actually started falling in love with marketing, was when I started learning all about how to put a strategy together, what it involved. And yes, the tactics are incredibly important, but you need to have that strategy to bring everything together so that it sings from the same hymn sheet as such, right? So I think that, and like I said, that was back in mid 1990s. So that was a long, long time ago. And since then, I've been refining my approaches to creating strategies and learning continually as I go along. And I still, hence the name of this webinar, lead with strategy. Always try and lead with the strategy, because understanding your audience, understanding what it is that they want, understanding your own needs, your own objectives, it's so important. And sometimes we just tend to, particularly as email marketers, we tend to grab those little shiny things, which are actually tactics, which deliver the results, but we will just throw them out there without any strategy behind it. And that means then it sometimes gives a very confusing and not a seamless experience for the audience.
Cool. Thanks, Gav. I can only see Sarah. So I'm just going to assume that Jennifer and Aubrey are ready. So we're going to go with Aubrey next. When did you realize that you had to take a strategy first approach?
Sure. Well, I actually got my start in email about 14 years ago. I worked at a nonprofit animal shelter, and there was a lot of fundraising events in that company. And, when you don't lead with strategy, there's a lot of panic and rushing to meet fundraising goals in that environment, because it's very important. It keeps the lights on, right? And you're doing something that's really important. But as a really young professional at that time, I just basically was the order taker when I started in email. And it was like, oh, we didn't sell enough tickets yet, so send another email. And that was sort of my first cycle of, here's Aubrey, part of email. And I very quickly realized that not only does it, generate a lot of panic and, not less effective email, right? Are you segmenting to the right people? I had no idea. And honestly, nobody else did either. And so because it was a cyclical thing, it gave me an opportunity to reflect on sort of how that thing went the first time, and then prepare for the next round, and really just come in and say, like, here's what we did last time. Like, here's every single email that we sent. Here's how those performed. And then what are we actually trying to do? Is this the best way to run this program? And so it just was my first, splash into email strategy, and really getting everyone to sort of think about it instead of just like, let's just send one more email. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Is there a better way to reach the people that we're trying to reach? How many tickets do we think we should be selling by X point? How many realistically can we get from an email? Like, really start thinking about what we're doing, why we're doing it. And it just kind of also brought like that, boiling point down a little bit, so you could think through it when you started leading with strategy. So that's how I got my start with it, is in that environment. And it's really helped me kind of carry that torch forward, no matter whether I worked as an independent consultant or now at an insurance carrier, to help people get to stop and think about like what they're doing, why they're doing it. And it's okay to pause.
Great. Yeah. I think that's a huge takeaway for me. It's okay to breathe. Feel free to breathe. It's fine. Take a breath. Take stock. It's sort of it's kind of almost like a be present. Sarah, did you have a one, just like a moment where you're like, oh yes, strategy first, tactics second?
Yeah, so I've had actually a lot of those aha moments. I've been doing email back since you actually had to create an actual text version of an email with the tab delimited in document, right? And so I've seen a lot.
Did you ever do the AOL, have to do the AOL version?
Yes. Yes, I'm talking like 20 years ago, or 20, yeah, probably about 20,
Oh,
24 years
since
ago.
Yahoo was relevant.
Yeah, pretty much. AOL
Yeah,
Messenger.
there you go.
So I've seen and done a lot of it, right? And I started talking about this 17 years ago at a company that I was at, where we were an agency and supporting clients and looking at launching a brand new email program. And at that point, it wasn't necessarily called a journey. At that point, it was just, let's get the right touch points in, and it was supporting different hotels. And so we started down that path, and we were able to get a relevant strategic campaign running for various hotel chains, and it was all templated, it was all built out, it was a massive project. Again, this was 17 years ago, so a lot of those tools weren't in place. Over my career, I've worked on the corporate side, I've worked on the agency side. I think where I found the biggest impact, and where it really hit me, when I was sitting in the corporate position, similar to the role that I'm in right now, so managing email for a large enterprise. And when I came into the company, they had a very antiquated ESP, and it was very much batch and blast. There was no coordination, no understanding. It was supporting multiple different business lines. And one group would send out a mass email, another one would send out a mass email. We didn't have a lot of, there wasn't a lot of prioritization. There wasn't a lot of understanding of even what those messages were, who we were going to. Data was a mess. So it was a whole fun pool of stuff to try and figure out. And over the course of at least my first year there, we really started getting into and driving home the importance of, we've got all these different business lines. How can we connect with the customers in what is most relevant to them based on the data that we have, right? And so we were able to build out kind of I refer to this as the Target newsletter, right? Or the Target weekly ad, because it's so dynamic and it has a purpose to it, and it's based off of the data that they have on their customers. I'm going to quote, this is not a Target promotion or anything like that. I did not work for Target. That's just how I dubbed it. And we created this very strategic email that went out to the customers on a weekly basis. It pulled in all the information that was relevant to them. If you were a parent and you had children, and you would get this kind of content. If you were somebody in your 30s who is not a parent, you'd get this kind of content. That shift from batch and blast, no coordination, no organization, significantly changed how our emails were presented, how they were, and the success of them overall. It was like probably 10 years ago, so I don't have all the numbers in my head anymore. But at that point, it's been that email is still in existence in various forms, but that really started to move the needle on customer acquisition, customer retention, as well as just coordination with different business lines and making sure that they were all happy as well.
Yeah, I remember those days. As does, well, I don't know how many of the people on this call do. I definitely remember those days. And I remember, working on an early version of a dynamic content program, but we called it dynamic content, but it wasn't. I mean, we're doing everything manually, and we were manually assigning the content blocks to each record and populating that using data fields, and it was like stone tablets, but it was better, right? It was better than everybody gets the same. It was for a wine company, so everybody gets the same red wine offer. Jennifer, do you have a tale of your aha moment?
Yeah, I actually think that I'm the baby on this call in terms of how long I've been doing email. So it's been 13 years. So not quite as long. And I feel like my story is a little bit flip-flop than what we've heard. So I got my start in email marketing at Kohl's department stores. And at that time in 2011, I'd say that we were pretty advanced. I mean, we were doing lots of segmentation. We were segmenting between men's, women's, kids, even within those lines between home and apparel and all these different things. And then also, before we had a loyalty program, our charge card was our loyalty program. And so we would also segment differently based on whether you had a Kohl's charge, the amounts you've spent with us, and then also with bank cards. So I learned email marketing drinking from a fire hose, because we had at that time at least 25 million people on our file, so many different SKUs. I was there for 4 years. And when I left, one of the things I wanted, because I was an email strategy, I wanted to own email from a more holistic perspective. And at Kohl's at the time, we had at least 500 people in marketing. We had 30, 40 people working on email marketing alone, between copy, design, strategy, data. And so then I went to Duluth Trading Company, where I owned everything. It was my coordinator and I were the only ones allowed in our ESP tool. And it was like going backwards, because they were sending all the emails to all the people all the time. And so I was very thankful to then bring in the knowledge that I had from Kohl's and say, hey, we need to take a look at how we're doing things. We should not be sending to these people. We had huge deliverability problems. That's where I really fell in love with email deliverability, and it still holds a very big place in my heart. Not as sexy as personalization and things like that, but so important to make sure you have a strong foundation. Yeah, I know. It's not the shiny, sparkly thing, but it's something that's really important. And so also we had a preference center in place there, and the preference center was trumping anything that the customers were doing on the website or browsing an email, which then I had to educate on, like, okay, I don't care if they said they want to hear about men's products. They are browsing women and putting women into their shopping cart. We need to be paying attention to this. So again, I kind of had the reverse kind of situation going on, where I started really strong with a lot of different data points, a lot of segmentation, and then went to something that was just a lot of steps backwards.
That's interesting. It was like, you started at an organization that was doing it right. And so your expectation is, well, this is the way it's done. Everybody does it this way. And then you go somewhere else and you're like, oh heavens.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got probably the most obvious, it's not the most obvious question, but it is a brilliant kickoff question in terms of getting this conversation into the getting into the nitty gritty. I'm going to read it in a second. Aubrey, I'm going to ask you if you could mute your microphone and then unmute your microphone, because that seems to have made it so I can see the other people. But there you are. Cool. I've got everybody back. I shouldn't need to see everybody, but it was really bothering me, and I apologize. So this question comes from Stephanie Marcadonatos. Stephanie, I really hope I pronounced that right. I have been practicing for about 3 minutes. And Stephanie's question is, foundational. What are the steps you take to develop a strategy? So what I think we ought to do is, Kath, I'm going to ask you to kind of do the best practice overview on that question. And then if I can get Aubrey, Sarah, and Jennifer to chip in with how that relates to their experiences and their different businesses, and whether it's your current business or a previous experience, whatever. So Kath, kick us off on that. What steps should our marketers be taking to develop their email strategy?
Okay, yeah, so great question, Stephanie. Well, when we do this for our clients, what we always do is start off with the business objectives, right? Because we all know the business objectives, and marketing is there to support those business objectives. So what we do is then break it into the life stages. So acquisition, maybe conversion, retention, and then win back. And then what I do is come up with understanding what the objectives are. So we might then go and write our own objectives to map back to the business objectives, and then try and come up with a number of different strategies that's going to be, addressing those objectives. And then from there on, the tactics are put in place. So it's like a waterfall. I always explain it when I'm training. It's like a waterfall. You start with the business objectives, then you convert into the marketing objectives, then you identify what strategies can be put in place on a, life stage basis. And then it converts into, okay, tactics. If you start the other way around and you just say, okay, great, so we can just do cart abandonment, we can do browser abandonment, we can have just a newsletter, we can do this, we can do that, we must have, I read an article and it said you should have these programs and everything. You're starting from the bottom up, and it's really hard then to work backwards. Whereas if you start at the right place, it flows. I used to do this all the time when I was training my students, and none of them had ever done it before. And we would do these exercises and they were just like, oh, and then you go, oh, and then it's so easy, and it's actually really, really fun. So, and the next thing, of course, is you have to write it down. And how I like to do these and what I believe these documents should be is I call them living, breathing documents, right? So it's a living, breathing strategy, and it's very robust, and it's going to be continually updated. So if you perform a test and you sort of go, oh, that's not quite working, or hey, you found out that you've got a big challenge that you didn't have when you originally created the strategy, then you have to go and add to it to address that challenge. So that's what I would call best practice.
Okay. I like it. I like the notion of a waterfall. I like the notion it always starts with goals and objectives. Not with the shiny, oh, we can do this. I heard somebody say this the other day. They said, you see a new channel and you figure out your strategy for it. Figure out your strategy and see if the channel fits.
Yes.
Now, while we're talking about channels, Aubrey, I want to come to you for a second. You've got a really unique, and I would argue enviable, you may not agree, role in that you control two channels. You control email and the website. Now, for those people in the audience who don't have that luxury, how do you communicate? How do you tie the strategies of those two things together? And how should an email marketer approach the web people? And is there a hierarchy there around, web is not more important, but the web strategy has to be sorted before the email strategy? Or talk to me or talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to have that holistic strategy as a marketing department. And if you don't own it all, it's about relationship building, right? And understanding that your success is their success and vice versa. I work with another person who works on the sort of the content marketing pieces. And so we start out our year talking about like, what kind of things is she going to build? And then what can I build from like the product space? What kind of landing pages do we need? Like, how is that all going to mesh together with our email program? And every time we do anything like go to market, how do those things work, in tandem with each other? And when I'm building things, or sending things to the developer, I'm always thinking like, do we have the right UTM codes attract? Do we have the right tracking? Is it going to move to Google Analytics? But also like the synergy, I'm sending email traffic to the website and website traffic to email, right? So we need to be thinking about that in a holistic manner to make sure that like we're using both channels in an effective way. It should not be one directional, which I think sometimes people think that it is, but it's not. Like, oh, we're only sending them through a form for the top of the funnel. Well, that's not always like the best time. Sometimes you need to send them to email in the middle of the funnel for various reasons. So I think of it that way, right?
Are you saying that people don't buy linearly? My customer journey is not a linear path. It's not the path you laid out very carefully in a conference room with a bunch of Post-it notes.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really easy to get into that line of thinking that, if someone hits that lead generation form, that they're just going to smoothly go all the way through and they'll never think about, I don't know, even submitting it a second time. People like drop
never.
off and they come back in 6 months and go, oh, oops, I forgot about this. And they start over and don't even remember where they started. There's all sorts of funny behaviors that you have to really pay attention to when you're in the middle of both.
I can't imagine anybody, say, buying some insurance wouldn't get halfway through the process and, oh, maybe need a piece of information they don't have to hand and wander away from their computer. And then 4 days later, come back and be like, oh, what was I doing?
Right. Yeah. And, also just making sure that your metrics are aligned. So, like, what are you trying to do? And making sure that, you're measuring the success of your email based on what you can actually track on the website side. And again, vice versa. So, are you looking for someone to fill out a form? That's a different metric than are you looking for them to actually make a purchase? So what do you actually expect them to do based on whatever activity is, and that both sides of those channels are aligned on those things? Because you'd be surprised. People assume, and if like Kath was saying, if it's not written down, you don't have agreement, you don't even know if what you did actually made a difference in the business. And if each person is setting themselves up for success to showcase that they're doing good work for the business. So yeah, it's kind of a fun place to play where you're in between both. It can be a lot to juggle though too.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that. Now, we talked a lot about the first. Kath and Aubrey have talked a lot about setting objectives and getting your marketing aligned. Sarah, I come from a retail banking background a long time ago. I was in retail banking before Yahoo was relevant, and before actually Yahoo was anything. And I'm sure it's changed a lot, or I'm going to say I hope it's changed a lot. But I can remember, different departments having different objectives, being measured on different things. The ATM team looked at customers differently than the credit card team looked at customers differently than the retail checking team. On and on and on. So I don't want you to call out your employer by any stretch of the imagination, but how do you manage when maybe the corporate goals are not necessarily completely aligned? You're supporting with your email strategy, you're supporting different stakeholders and their objectives are maybe aligned to the ultimate corporate goal, but not necessarily aligned with each other from a customer perspective.
That's a great question. And Skip, knowing that you came from this background, there's a lot that has not changed, and there's some that has changed.
Okay.
But it's honestly, it's a challenge that we're dealing with regularly and currently right now, actually. And it's where everybody, I think all the marketers that I work with, so I work in a shared service, right? We support multiple different business lines throughout the thing. And we all have the same objective, right? We all line up to that corporate objective, and even down to at the business line level with the marketing teams, right? So we are actually all aligned as far as what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. Where the challenge is understanding what that prioritization actually is across the different business lines. How our frequency works in touching each one of our customers who we're talking to, and does it make sense to communicate with customer A, B, and C at this point versus customer D, E, and F. We do have our credit card business is very separate than the retail banking. So we work very closely. Aubrey, you had mentioned relationships are such a huge aspect of it. And I 100% agree with you. We have very close partnerships and very close relationships with our business partners. So my counterparts that work on, I think there are another one or two areas that control their own email programs that are very much in their own business. But we align across our platform, across our channel. We all share the same platform. It's all coming from the same database. So we do have some controls in place there. And then it's also managing those relationships with our business partners and saying, okay, this business line is focusing on this customer or this type of customer or this product that we're trying to sell or service that we're trying to sell. This business line B is kind of doing some of the same things. So let's see if there's a way to match that up. That's where we're starting to really, I think, start to make some progress there, where it is taking a step back. So for years and years and years, and a lot of companies, not just banks, a lot of clients of mine, companies that I've worked at, it's very much quality or quantity over quality. So let's just get as many emails as we can out the door. but then what happens, and Jennifer, you touched on deliverability, and I'm a complete deliverability nerd. I love it. I'm so excited. It's fun to kind of geek out on some of that stuff because that is so important. You can have the best email program in the entire world, but if you're not getting to the inbox, it doesn't matter. And so that's another thing that we keep in mind too. So we're working across our business lines. We're working with my peers or my counterparts in a couple of other different departments. And then my team is really truly looking at what's actually happening on the back end. And then we report that back in. It's a big cycle. Report that back in, look at the trends, look at how things are performing, report those back to the business lines, and make recommendations on having more strategy around what we're sending. So those conversations are already starting to happen, which is great. At the end of the day, though, it's very much, why don't we take a step back, look at all the objectives, what are we trying to accomplish in Q2, Q3, Q4 for the full year, and go, all right, what channel makes sense for this offer or this customer, and how do we provide the content to fit into that channel as well. And then Kath, you were talking about that waterfall. It's a little bit of both, where you start at the top and go, does this channel actually make sense? All right, what content do we have available? Let's plug it in where we need to, and then figure out, and knowing what our audience is for each one of those. And then we can have a more holistic approach on not only just email, but all digital channels as well.
I was just thinking about, I won't name the brand, but I used to work with a brand out in banking. Same kind of thing though. Lots of different business units, lots of different stakeholders, one customer base. And I used to have to participate in their weekly bid meetings, and that's what they called it. And it was marketers bidding for customers. How do we not saturate or over inundate the inbox of our customers? These are my top tier customers, and I'm happy to give up some of my B's and C's to somebody else for whom they're top tier, as long as I get my top tier. And the negotiations that went on in these meetings is pretty interesting. So I can imagine, Sarah, you probably have a similar kind of, it sounds like you've taken it slightly different, the other way, which is, here's our customer, what's the best thing for them, rather than here's what I need to push. who's most likely to buy it? Sounds like US Bank is taking a much more customer-centric approach on that.
Yeah, we're trying. We're definitely making some progress. I've been at the bank for about 3 years, and there's a lot more progress. We've brought in a new CDP, and so that helps allow for better orchestration. And we have all of the tools in place. Now we're working on the plumbing essentially, and making sure that everybody is fully aligned as well. So, and the other thing too, and anybody in a regulated industry, risk and compliance are my best friends. They are my best friends because they can help drive. So we actually have an enterprise email policy, which falls under my team, and then risk and compliance as well. And so it manages governance, it manages prospecting versus emailing our customers. So there's a lot of guidelines and a lot of guardrails, I guess, to make sure that things don't go completely off the rails as well. So partnering with them is a huge factor for me.
It's so nice to hear an email marketer say that compliance is their best friend. So often it's like, oh, legal compliance, bad, horrible. So
yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Being in insurance, it's very regulated, and one of the first tasks I needed to do was look at everything that was actually happening and make sure that things are properly categorized, that we have proper unsubscribes. And that seems really simple, but you'd be surprised. And I know in the email geeks community, like, some folks don't have access to those people that have that expertise, so you're making your best guess, and boy, that is scary as an email professional when you have to be the one deciding legalese. So yeah, I agree that they can be your best friends for sure. You said something else that I thought was really important. It's sort of about gaining visibility to what your strategy is and what the impact to the customer is. I think a lot of times email is just this thing that you just kind of push and you do, and I don't know what happens afterwards, but we got it out there. Having like email calendars, having regular meetings, showing sort of pictures of whatever life cycle work you're doing, the touch points that you're doing. Those are things that really get you that relationship, that buy-in about when you start saying, we need to do it differently. This is not the best experience for the customer. And you can just like show a picture of what you're doing. It's a really powerful tool that you can bring into that negotiation, that like Skip that you were talking about, to actually show and tell, we wanted to do this, but they're getting bombarded with this email and this email and this email at the same time or within a week period. What would that feel like to you if you were that customer? So instead of just talking through like this doesn't work, show them what that experience is.
To piggyback off of you, Aubrey. So I'm back on agency side, but I've done my fair share of agency and client brand side, predominantly in retail. dunnhumby is a little bit different for me in terms of grocery and whatever, but when I was at Merkle, I did a lot of customer journey mapping sessions and whiteboarding. And yes, it's very important to be able to show all your different systems, and getting people together from different areas of the company is really important. There was a whiteboarding session I did with an entertainment client out in San Francisco, and their customer service department had a separate email platform that they were sending messages out on that the marketing department didn't know was happening. And same with IT had some weird thing going on where they were sending out emails. And so it's important to make sure that you have everybody on the same page, or if you're starting a new life cycle journey, to invite different members of the organization to make sure that you're including common pain points. So I was doing a mapping session for Culligan, the water company, and we were just focusing on welcome series. And inviting their representatives from customer service were so important to make sure that we were covering off on those big pain points within the welcome series to divert calls from going to customer service. That was really important. So yes, I would say any visualization you have, whether it's pictures or doing a map in Miro or whatever that looks like, but then also involving other parties across the organization to make sure that you're covering off on pain points, all the systems in play to make sure that emails or whatever, you're sending out are coming from platforms that you're aware of.
So you know what the common theme is with, I think, what everyone has been talking about is working together with other, your colleagues, other channels, because you're all working for the same business. And, and we have identified, there's very obvious problems that can happen, and it really is about buddying up with them. So for example, in email marketing, we're rewarded on list growth, but the majority, except for you, Aubrey, the majority of us don't really have that much say about like where the subscribe form is on the website or anything like that. And so the web team actually, they've got their own goals that they need to be hitting, right? As you were saying, they've got different goals to us, and they're rewarded differently to us. However, they actually have 90% ownership of our goal, because they can designate where the form is going to be on the website, which is going to hinder us to achieve our goal. So what we need to do is to come and all meet up together and really, discuss all of these things and see how we can come to a happy conclusion. I was just thinking we could bring in that other question then from Christiane then too.
About add to cart.
No, I thought that was air traffic control.
Well, let's ask Jennifer, since Christiane works with Jennifer at dunnhumby.
Uh-huh.
In dunnhumby parlance, is ATC add to cart, or is it air traffic control?
Oh my gosh, you're asking me this. This is my second week.
I was going to say, this is really unfair. This is really unfair. First off, Jennifer, congratulations on the new gig.
Thank you.
So Tracy, also from dunnhumby, has said air traffic control. So
thanks.
Yeah, that is a great thanks. Both, first off, Jennifer, thanks for bringing your colleagues.
Oh yes, I know, no pressure at all there.
Yeah. At least you're in the U.S. in the UK, we have this 3-month probationary period. So if you screwed it up today, you could be out the door. But in the US, you're fine. You've got the job. Anyway, it is a great question. From, I'm not even going to try that last name, from Jennifer's colleagues from Dunhunby. How do you create and maintain control? Like, how do you, Aubrey, you were talking about all these different communications and coming out from different places, and how do you, and Jennifer then was talking about how do you represent that. I worked for an insurance client that printed out every email that a customer would get from application through renewal, and then they taped it to a sheet of paper, and the sheet of paper was about 40 feet long.
That's a lot of email.
It was a ton of email, and of course they're highly regulated, so the email was probably 10% content and 90% terms and conditions. And so how do you, while you're building your strategy, and is this a thing you do while you're building your strategy, put the controls in place, or is it a something you do after?
It's definitely not something you do after. And the company I work on right now is more of a B2B to C. So it's a different sort of way to think about email. The email program is very focused on independent insurance agents as the primary audience. And then they're having conversations with the policyholder. So it's a little bit different than what you described. It also makes it unique with how you track, success. But, I start with sort of, again, that mapping, like, what are we trying to do for the year? And obviously, sometimes that changes depending on how your year is going. I think everyone's experienced a little bit of that. You look at Q1 results and you make adjustments in Q2, and getting sort of that holistic eagle eye view of what is happening in this channel, relating it to what other channels can do, sometimes redirecting air traffic control, right? Nope, plane can't land here right now. We are focused on this as a business. We've said this is the most important thing for the growth plan. And so we don't want to interrupt that experience for the customer. So why don't we try social media? Why don't we try the sales, partners reaching out directly to the right people or whatever, right? But again, it's really about visibility and making sure that you're talking about what's best for the customer and what's best for that product and growth plan. If you're trying to do 10 things at once, your customer isn't going to do it. They're being bombarded in their inbox. I don't know about you, but I just get hundreds of emails all the time, and I might be interested, but I'm not going to read every single one you even send me. So if you're trying to do 10 things at once, I don't even know what you're trying to have me do at that point. So you really have to focus, and you have to help people understand that you need to focus, because you have competition in the inbox, and it's very easy to forget that you are talking directly to that customer, but they're also being talked to by everybody else.
Yeah, and as Kath was saying earlier, having a living, breathing document is going to be important because things change all the time. I like to say, at the beginning of every year or towards the end of the year, if you're in retail, of course, getting out of holiday season. So I'm very much D2C type environment, but taking a look at some of your programs that some people say to set and forget. That's not the case. You should be updating those very often and doing tests and things like that. So kind of taking a look back and seeing how things performed. And then, yes, kind of paying attention to what's going on in the industry, always making sure that you're running tests with your audience. It's great to look at benchmarks of what other people are doing or kind of what's going on in your industry, but it's really important to know your audience. And so to be, the voice of the customer for your company, I realize that email is, it's walking a fine line of trying to get sales, but also making sure that you're retaining your customers. And so being that voice for them internally is going to be important. So yes, visibility, Aubrey, as you were saying, is huge, and making sure that you have a seat at the table as part of the email program to bring kind of people back down to the ground where, you might have, I've had a lot of leadership places that I've worked directly or on the agency side that are all about acquisition and things like that, and trying to say that that's great, but really we need to be focusing on retention and keeping the subscribers that we have and making sure that we're serving them well, and anything we're collecting on them we're using for good, making sure that we're sending them relevant communications. So all of that also very, very important.
And
You
one
said
other
something-
more,
Go ahead.
sorry. I was going to say one other more operational thing, and I agree with both of you 100%. It is very much about visibility, education, and educating the marketing teams on what can happen if if we're not mindful and strategic about what and how and when we're sending. The other thing though too, and I said this is very operational, but list hygiene also makes a big difference too, because you could have the best audience segment and the best message, and somebody may not have opened an email in 9 months, 6 months, 12 months. And so understanding what that hygiene looks like, and then that's where you go into looking at a win-back program possibly, and working with the business lines, working with your clients on, okay, we have this pool of consumers that haven't engaged in anything from us in the last 6 months. Let's reach back out to them, or let's try and figure out a way to get them back in. In fact, I just got one from a nonprofit today, so it's very top of mind for me. I was going to share it as an example internally as well. So
Yeah.
but yeah, that's part of it as well.
That's an excellent point about making sure you know who's on your list, especially if I think someone in the chat was asking about like advice for how you're starting. It's like digging into who is on your list, how long have they been there, what are they engaging with. I worked on some political campaigns, really large lists, and you can't, again, back to deliverability, you can't just keep sending like batch and blast, send to everybody, and then have 1% open rate or even less than that. It's not good. But also, I think Jennifer, you were saying something about this, making sure you're adding value. So we often think about email as it's a selling delivery channel, but why do people sign up? Why do they give you their email address in the first place? It might be because they're hoping for a discount. It might be because they want to learn something about your company. It might be that like, hey, I think that, your t-shirts are really cool style. What can you add value to make them see that you're more than just a place to buy something? Because that's how you keep people on your email program in the long term. You also get them excited about, I gave you my email address, I'm working through that funnel, and you're already giving me value. So how do I style that t-shirt? Or what kind of cool educational webinar can I come to? Or what kind of blog do you have to tell me about like who you are and your story and why should I care? That's a really important part when we're talking strategy. It's not just how can I sell to them, but how can I make them loyal customers for the long term?
Absolutely.
The sticky content, yes. And
Yeah.
and also like in terms of loyalty, I mean, trust is the foundation there. So that's where I had said, in terms of the data that you're collecting on them, make sure that everything that you're requesting from your consumer is something that you're going to be using to segment or to target differently. So the example that I like to use is when I was working at Merkle, Neutrogena was one of our clients, and when we were setting up their birthday campaign, it made sense to ask for the year that somebody was born, because we're able to segment and push different products to you. If you're a teenager, acne prone, if you're like me and in your 40s, wrinkle, anti-aging, things like that. But at ASICS, when we were setting this up, to ask for the year that you were born was not going to do anything for us. We weren't going to treat you differently depending on when you were born. And so, customers, the days of ads tracking you on the internet being creepy, like that's not a thing anymore. It's table stakes. But making sure that if you're asking somebody for information, you're letting them know why, and you're using that for good. I did a talk on this last year in terms of, big data versus small data, and trying to get back to thinking small, because all of this data that you're requesting from people is just going to take up space. It becomes obsolete more quickly. You're not really understanding your consumer. But again, the trust being that there are there are lots of other places these people can go. So creating a meaningful relationship with them by collecting data from them and utilizing that to make their communications more relevant is a really huge part of customer loyalty and trust.
Yeah, Jennifer,
Right.
I think ACES,
psychographics. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think ACES could get away with asking their age because, if my 18-year-old was running their marketing department, she'd be like, no, Dad, you can't wear those trainers. You're not, you've aged out of those trainers. But, I could be wrong.
Well, there's a bigger problem that we had there, in that if you bought a pair of running shoes, we assumed that you loved running marathons. And I ran some campaigns across the globe and found out that, actually a big portion of the audience doesn't care about running marathons. They like the shoes. Athleisure is a thing. They fit their wide feet. They run errands in them. Even for me, I played soccer for a long time. I haven't played for probably a decade. I would probably die if I tried to do it now, but just because I'm buying the running shoes doesn't mean that I'm out running marathons. So as you're collecting data on customers, it's important to understand whatever business that you're in, why somebody is making a purchase instead of making assumptions.
Yeah, and
Yes.
we actually just started in with kind of a survey. What like sending an onboarding email, give them 3 options. Which content did you find helpful? Or doing, a mood tracker on, did you like this content? Did you not like this content? And actually starting to ingest that so we can start adding that as a data point that's not intrusive to the customer, that's not making them feel like, I don't want to give you my birthday. I don't want to give you my personal information, my shoe size, my waist size. And it's very easy ways to start to collect information where we can provide content that will work for them.
You mean my bank doesn't need to know my waist size? I can't believe that. So I'm just conscious of time. So I'm just another person has asked a really, really good question. Again, I'm guessing on the name. I'm gonna guess Stephanie Shashik has asked about how AI is going to change our lives as strategists. We've got 5 minutes left, not enough time to get to that question, but Stephanie, I'll make sure we answer it in next month's Email More, which is all about generative AI. It's supposed to be about copywriting, but we'll work some strategy bits in there as well. And again, hopefully I got your name right. So this is a yes or no. I'm going to ask Sarah quickly. Kelly wants to know, are you seeing decent engagement on those engagement checks?
We just launched it. So,
okay. We'll get you back in a couple of months. Perfect.
Okay. So we are seeing some additional engagement. Our click-through rates are a little bit lower than we'd like them to be. So we're trying to instill different, we're testing it out right now, but so far it's good. I just don't have a full lift on what it is.
Oh, and Kelly's asked another great question about, Kelly's very, very carefully asking the is email gonna die question without asking it again. So actually Kelly, that's a great question. We'll figure out a way to answer that again in the future. There are really 2 questions though that I want to ask the panel, because we've had a great conversation about what to include in your strategy and how to develop your strategy and how to build your strategy. In your experience, is there one thing that people tend to overlook that when it's pointed out to them, they're like, oh yeah. So Jennifer, Kath, you're both nodding. Kath, why don't you start with that one?
Okay, so if you rewatch everything, you can see what everyone is actually referring to, but not actually directly stating, doing an audit. And I'm not talking about a little checkbox here and there and everything. In-depth audit, really dive in, look at the numbers, critique the emails, critique the content, critique the strategy, everything. So you need to, and this also answers the question that was asked by Zara as well, 1 month into.
No, wait, don't answer Zara's question.
No, okay.
I'm gonna ask you. That's your wrap-up question.
Well, this is one and the same, right? So
okay,
do an audit. get to know. So not only you get to know your audience, you get to know what you're currently doing, you get to understand what is missing, where are your the opportunities, your missed opportunities, but you really, really do the deep dive and understand. And if you can't do it, then get, a consultant or someone in to do it for you, and they can present everything to you. But that is that's the key thing. So many people and brands and teams just kind of forget about that. They know what they know, but they don't know what they don't know, and they're happy with that. So it's
Yeah,
a big mistake.
you never know what you
Yeah.
don't know.
I would say along with that too, making sure that when you do an audit, that you're documenting that audit somewhere because oftentimes I find, especially as I've been doing more consulting, that you have one person that has everything in their brain and then they leave or whatever happens and you don't have that documented anywhere. So documentation is really, really important. As Kath said, it can be a living, breathing document. It could be something that you've done in the past, but I fully agree with an audit and making sure you document. And to add on to that, and definitely can be part of an audit, a lot of times I saw this a lot at Merkle. People would think that their ESP was a problem, and really it wasn't. They wanted to do all these cool, things, dynamic content. They didn't have the data to support it. So make sure that if you want to do something, dynamic or that relates to something that, another campaign or whatever it is, make sure that you have that data. If you don't, identify where you have data gaps and then figure out a way to try and get that information. So that can be progressive profiling, that can be surveys, that could be interactive content, whatever that is. But that is what else I will add to that.
I think the documenting your audit point is so important. There isn't anybody on this call that doesn't want a promotion. And if you get promoted, now you're managing the person who's taking your job. And if you don't want them asking you 1,000 questions, hand them a document. And it's like, this is what this is where we started. These are all the tests that we've run. This is how they did. You know everything. Go forward and launch. So I'm going to wrap up with this question. So I'm going to shoot this one to Aubrey and Sarah. We've had a lovely person, Zara O'Dowd, who has been super patient because she asked this question about 45 minutes ago. But I think it's a great one. First off, Zara, congratulations on your new job. Welcome to the email community. You'll find that we're a really supportive bunch. So it's your first month in. What's the number one piece of advice for someone starting out your career? I'm going to steal one before I let the other panelists, Sarah and Aubrey, answer. Join Email Geeks. Join the Email Geeks Slack channel. Email people are the loveliest people in the world. Ask them a question. They will answer it. Now, a bunch of them may argue about the answer while they're answering it. That happens a lot, but at least you'll get a robust answer. So Sarah, over to you. Somebody starting out in email, it's their first month. What's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Man, it's been so long since I started out in email that I'm not sure. I would agree, Skip, sign up for as many newsletters and as many groups as you possibly can about email. And as you're starting in your new job and trying to get the lay of the land, I would start really simple, take a step back, look at the foundation of how it's set up, where's the data, where are the integrations sitting, what's the tech stack, and then engage with other email marketers in the industry. I mean, I learn more from being at email specific industry conferences versus even vendor conferences than I do in any other industry. And I've touched most digital channels, and email marketers they're fun. We're cool. We're geeks.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, we are. We're both. We're geeky cool.
Mm-hmm.
Or to quote a movie, demented and sad, but social. Aubrey, what would be your one piece of advice for Zara?
I'd say get curious. I'd say, most people that I know in email are sort of DIYers by nature. So, they don't have a lot of people sitting there and teaching you this in a class, how to be an email marketer. So, poke around your email service providers, software, talk to your account managers, talk to people internally, talk to email geeks, because you just learn so much, be a sponge. So that'd be my first piece of advice. And then also in your company specifically, figure out what is already working really well and see if there's a way to lean into that, because that's a quick win often is this email's working amazing. Why don't we do more of that? That's sort of the low hanging fruit. And you can actually make a really big difference just finding like a quick win.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
one last thing too, as somebody who's
Sure.
been in email for 24, 25 years, I still, if I'm pulling together presentations, whether it's a speaking presentation, something like this, or whether it is just presenting internally, I still Google just about everything because I want to get the most up-to-date information as I possibly can, because email hasn't really changed a lot, but tactics and opportunities have shifted quite a bit. So never feel bad if you are digging up research and trying to get an answer on something that you might already know, but you just validation.
That's
Yeah, and
perfect.
I'd
I think my
say-
last. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that in terms of people that are in the space and webinars and newsletters, and there's so much more information now than when I started an email. I didn't even realize until Women of Email was created in 2016 how many of us were actually involved. So take advantage of these free webinars, reach out to people, utilize LinkedIn, reach out to one of us if you have questions. We've been in the space for a long time. You'll find that, yes, we are very friendly. We're cool people. And probably more oftentimes than not, I personally, anybody that'll talk to me about email, I will talk forever about it. So you'll find, there's a lot of people that are willing to help in a lot of different resources.
I should probably throw in too that, I would read. There are a lot of great authors in email marketing. Kath Pay, for example, has written a best-selling book on email marketing, but there are others. Other books are available. So there's loads of stuff out there. And then I think just one final thought for me on that is, if you go to the community to ask a question, when somebody else comes to the community and you know the answer, it's really important that you jump in and share that. And there's nothing more rewarding than the first time that you get to answer a question and everybody's like, oh yeah, what Zara said. And that's going to make your day. So we are a little bit over time and I apologize for that, but you get more bang for your buck this way. First, I would like to thank our wonderful sponsors. Our platinum sponsor this year, give a big round of applause, virtually of course, to RP Origin, and our silver sponsors, Sino and Bouncer. And of course, a huge thank you to this wonderful panel. This was great. This was such a great conversation. This one was easy for me. I literally had to do nothing except kind of steer. And so there was a lot covered here. The recording will be up later this week. Probably worth going back, listen to it again, and taking some of those critical bits in. Thanks, of course, to you all for joining us and spending an hour and a bit with us today. I know everybody's busy, but thank you for taking the time. Now, Kath and I will be back. I mentioned this earlier. We're doing a generative AI copywriting for email marketing presentation on May 21st. Chat, email more presentation. It's one of these on the 21st of May. So we'll be back then. Zara, I expect to see you in the audience. Until then, folks, stay safe and make good choices.